11.2 Public Goods and the Free Rider Problem. The Free Rider Problem. Public goods are non excludable and non rival, and such goods create a free rider problem. A free rider is a person who enjoys the benefits from a good or service without paying for it. Because everyone consumes the same quantity of a public good and no one can be excluded from enjoying its benefit, no one has an incentive to pay for it. Everyone has an incentive to free ride. The free rider problem is that the private market, left on its own, would provide a too small quantity of a public good. To produce the efficient quantity, the government action is required. Some public goods, the law, flood control levies, police protection, and firefighting service, are examples of public goods. Public goods challenge markets because non-excludability means it's difficult to charge non-payers, that is free rider problem. In addition, non-rivalry means that the marginal cost of providing a good to an additional person is zero. For example, if one extra person from neighborhood walks under a street light, does not cost anything extra or more to government. So if you move to Spain from the place you are residing, it does not cost anything extra for the national defense. To see how the private market would provide too little of a public good and how government might provide the efficient quantity, we need to consider the marginal benefit from a public good and its marginal cost. The marginal benefit from the public good is a bit different from the private good. The marginal benefit and marginal cost of public good. The marginal cost of a public good is determined in exactly the same way as that of a private good. The marginal cost curve slopes upwards because of the principle of increasing marginal cost. A public good does not create an externality, so the marginal cost is also the marginal social cost. The marginal benefit from the public good is a bit different from that of a private good. For a private good, the marginal benefits curve is a market demand curve. Everyone pays the same market price for a private good, and each person chooses the quantity to buy at that price. In contrast, for a public good, everyone consumes the same quantity, but each person puts a different private value on that quantity. We find the marginal benefit from a public good by summing the marginal benefits of all individuals at each quantity. We find the MSB curve, that is marginal social benefit curve, by summing the individual marginal benefit curve vertically. In contrast, to obtain the MB curve for a private good, we sum the individual demand curve horizontally. In the figure, the MSB curve is obtained by the vertical summation of the individual marginal benefit curve of Lisa and Max. We can see from the table how Lisa's MB is 80 between 0 and 1 unit, and Max MB is 50. By adding vertically 80 and 50, we get 130 of economy's MSB. Because everyone shares in the benefits of a public good, the marginal private benefits of everyone in the society are added together to get the public good's marginal benefit. So the marginal benefit from a public good is the marginal social benefits, and its marginal benefit curve is the marginal social benefit curve, or MSB. The efficient quantity of a public good. An efficient quantity is determined by marginal social benefit equals marginal social cost. The figure shows the marginal social benefit curve MSB and the marginal social cost curve MSC of surveillance satellites that provide national services. If MSB exceeds MSC, resources can be used more efficiently, increasing the quantities of public good. If MSC exceeds MSB, resources can be used more efficiently by decreasing the quantity of the public good. If marginal social benefit equals the marginal social cost, resources are being used efficiently in this example. In this example, it is 200 satellites. You can see from the picture. This is the efficient quantity of public goods. Private provision, underproduction. Because of the free rider problem, public goods are underprovided by private firms, so public provision of public goods might lead to efficiency. Public provision, that is efficient production. Competition between political parties, each of which tries to appeal to the maximum number of voters, can lead to the efficient scale of provision of a public good and to both parties proposing the same policies. The principle of minimum differentiation. To appeal to the maximum number of clients or voters, competitors tend to make themselves identical. This principle not only describes the behavior of political parties but also explains why fast food restaurants cluster in the same block and why new car models have similar features. If McDonald's open a restaurant in a new location, it is more likely that Burger King will open next door to McDonald's Esther than a mile down the road. If Chrysler designs a new backup camera or a hands-free phone system, most likely Ford will too. For example, there are two political parties, the Hawks and the Doves, which agree on all issues except for the quantity of defense satellites. The Hawks wants 300 satellites and the Doves wants 100 satellites. Both parties wants to get elected, so they run a voter survey and discover the MSB curve shown in figure. They also consult with satellite producers to establish the marginal schedule. The parties then do a what-if analysis. If the Hawks propose 300 satellites and the Doves propose 100 satellites, the voters will be equally unhappy with both parties. Compared to the efficient quantity, the Doves wants an under provision of 100 satellites and the Hawks want an over provision of 100 satellites. The deadweight losses are equal and the election would be too close to call. Contemplating this outcome, the Hawks figured that if they scale back to 250 satellites, they will win the election if the Doves propose 100 satellites. The Doves reason in a similar way and figure that if they increase the number of satellites to 150, they can win the election if the Hawks propose 300 satellites. Each party knows how the other is reasoning and how they realize that their party must provide 200 satellites or it will lose the election. So both parties propose 200 satellites. The voters are indifferent between the parties and each party receives 50% of the vote. Public provision over production. If competition between two political parties is to deliver the efficient quantity of satellites, the Defense Department, the Pentagon, must cooperate and help to achieve this outcome. Objective of bureaucrats. The bureau head seeks to maximize his department's budget because a bigger budget creates or brings greater status and power. For the Pentagon, the objective is to maximize the defense budget. Figure shows the outcome if the Pentagon is successful in the pursuit of its goal. The Pentagon might try to persuade the politicians that 200 satellites cost more than the originally budgeted amount, or the Pentagon might press its position more strongly and argue for the more than 200 satellites. The Pentagon pursues the politicians to go for 300 satellites. The efficient quantity is 200 satellites with MSB equals MSC. Bureaucrats are well informed and voters are rationally ignorant, so bureaucrats are able to increase production and their budget to a level at which MSC is greater than MSB. With 300 satellites, MSC exceeds MSB and inefficient overproduction occurs. Rational ignorance. Rational choice balances marginal benefit and marginal cost. Rational ignorance is a decision not to acquire information because the marginal cost of doing so exceeds the marginal benefit. For example, each voter in the United States knows that he or she can make virtually no difference to the defense policy of the US government. Each voter also knows that it would take an enormous amount of time and effort to become even moderately well informed about alternative defense technologies, so voters remain relatively uninformed about the technicalities of defense issues. All voters benefit from national defense, but not all voters produce national defense. Only a small number work in the defense industry. Voters who own or work for firms that produce satellites have a direct personal interest in defense because it affects their incomes. These voters have an incentive to become well informed about defense issues and to lobby politicians to further their own interests. In collaboration with the defense bureaucracy, these voters exert a larger influence on public policy than do the relatively uninformed voters who only benefit from this public good. Government is large and growing. Government is large and it grows faster than the rest of the economy to take an ever larger share of production. Voter preferences for public goods drive the growth of government. The demand for national personal security and the demand for other public services are income elastic. As income increases, demand for these services increases by a larger percentage than the increase in income. Inefficient bureaucratic over-provision of public goods and services might make garments too big and too costly. There is no easy fix for this problem. Our ever-growing demand for education and healthcare services contribute to the large and growing scale of garment.